What's up, gang? So today I want to explain or try to illustrate for you one of the problems in computer science that I think is maybe more interesting than anything else I've come across in the last decade at least. And so this is a problem that only comes up in a system that is fully modular. Okay, a system that is totally extensible where every component can be modified to suit the end user's taste. And so this involves some concepts, or really the main concept it involves from computer science is known as inheritance. So the use of objects and inheritance. And so I'm going to try and, if you're not familiar with the stuff, this is all new, I get that. You may have come across this in your work, if you're a developer, as something known as the MVC construct, Model View Controller. That is related to inheritance and the use of objects. But I feel like MVC is a bit of it's like an extra conceptual layer that doesn't really need to be there, that can actually hinder your understanding of these basic things. So I want to try to illustrate specifically how modular site construction works, and then I'll introduce you to this very fascinating problem that exists in all of computer science, or indeed in any system that is designed any system that uses inheritance to work. And I think it'll blow your mind when I bring this all home for you, okay? So let's start by, I'll illustrate what a modular construction might look like and how it might work, okay? We're just looking at a little test site I've got here. So if you used my software in the last 12 years, you've come across this. But if you haven't, you probably don't have a great example to point to or a great example to refer to in your mind about how modular construction and inheritance really work. So let's take a look at something that I hope can help illustrate this. So if you have ever worked with WordPress, specifically with WordPress themes, then you will be familiar with this idea of editing files and then putting those files on your server, like template files. And then when a page is called up on your WordPress website, such as your homepage, then what outputs is the product of this template file that you have uploaded to your server. That's the way WordPress themes have worked forever. A long time ago, going back to like 2010, I realized that this is not the only way to do templates. And in fact, the way WordPress does templates is wrong. It's not fully leveraging the power of computer science. The first problem with the way WordPress themes work is that your themes, like I said, your templates exist as files. They exist as files. Why is that a problem? Well, files are artifacts. They must be manually edited to make changes in those files. And there's ways you can build the files to build in dynamic functionality, but the bottom line remains that a lot of stuff you have to go into the template files and change things if you want to make changes. That is not very efficient, and it's also technically demanding. Like you have to have an FTP client, you got to interface with files, you got to change fundamental parts of the system, and you could break the system. So it's not desirable to have templates existing as files, even though that's the way it's been done for 20 plus years. So what you're looking at here is something I built a long time ago. It's called this skin editor for Thesis. Thesis is a piece of software that works with WordPress. It started life as a WordPress theme, but once I realized that the way themes work is not right, I decided to change Thesis from a theme into an engine to build themes, okay? And you're looking at one of the tools within Thesis, that engine, that is used to build templates. And these templates, when you build them, they exist then as data in your database and not as files on the server. And so, for example, this is the blog template, which is like a stand-in for the homepage template. There's the blog template, and then there's also the front page template. So if you're using a static front page in WordPress, which we would all consider just a regular homepage, then the front page template is what's going to render. We are looking at the front page template here, as indicated by this little box down here. Tells you which template is currently running. And these items that you see here are known as boxes and containers. This determines what the HTML output of the template is going to be. Like this is a section. This section it's a div tag, and it's got an HTML ID of header. Nav, same kind of deal. A secondary nav section. I've got content, WordPress loop. I've got a post box, which is going to output things like a title, headline, for example, the content of the page that you've edited in WordPress, featured image, all kinds of stuff. You can add anything you want here. There's lots more things that I could display that I'm not displaying. It's got a sidebar, which is optional. I've built in some other functionality like turn things on and off within templates. But all this stuff, this data, exists within the template, and there is no actual file to represent this template. So this template is created in this editor that you see here, and it's created in the editor, and the data that this produces after creating it and saving it, it lives in the database, and again, not as a file on the server. A collection of templates is a WordPress theme. In thesis parlance, it's known as a skin, but you could think of it as just a WordPress theme. Okay, it's a different way to build a WordPress theme. And so every template that, if I go to different pages and different template is rendering on each one, this is the blog template, this is the single post template, we've got page template, landing page, there's various others. And so all the templates that render are being pulled from data from the database, which is fascinating. It's a totally different way for themes to work and to manage them. And then this enables lots of other amazing functionality, such as I've got display controls where you can turn items on or off. Like there's a secondary nav menu included in the template, but it will not display if the user has chosen not to use a secondary nav menu. So it exists in the template, but it won't display because the current user says, no, I don't want to use this. So even that alone is another layer of flexibility within templates that you're probably not familiar with if you've been using WordPress for a long time and just using the file-based template arrangement that WordPress has. So there's a lot of interesting functionality, like I said, that this provides that you don't get with a file-based system. And it's also easier to manage, and it opens up possibilities like a data manager, so I can back up, I can restore, I can import, I can export the current state of my theme. I mean, the entire thing, all the design options, all the display options, which determine what stuff displays in your templates and what doesn't, turn stuff on and off, that kind of thing. So all of your design options, display options, your custom CSS, the actual CSS for the theme itself, the editor CSS. This is what displays when you go to compose a post. It's got like a WYSIWYG ability in that editor. The theme designer would go in and add all this stuff to make sure that everything that displays as the editor is going to match what displays on the front end for the final results of the site. In this data manager, because the templates exist as data, you can then, take a snapshot of your site at some moment and then go and try to make some changes. Maybe you don't like those changes. You can revert back to a previous state and then start over, whatever you want to do. But this gives you a much more flexible customization environment, because you can make changes, you can try things, you can revert back to previous states. You always have a point to return to if something you've tried doesn't work out. So that's amazing as well. So anyway, this is how the front end theme of a WordPress website ought to work. It ought to be data-driven rather than file-driven. It's a very simple efficiency gain in computer science. If we can run stuff with data, it's better and more maintainable than running stuff, and faster, more flexible, et cetera, et cetera. It's better than running stuff with files. So that's how the front end, which is like your actual output that displays on your website, works. But with WordPress, that's not the only thing we have, right? We also have the admin side of things. So we have two sides of a WordPress website. We've got the admin side, which visitors don't see, and also the front end side, which visitors do see. But what's the difference between these two sides of your website, other than the fact that visitors don't see one, but they do see the other? Well, it's kind of a trick question. There is no difference. Both of these, the WordPress admin and the front end of your website, are both just web pages. At the end of the day, both of these things are just web pages. And I've already discussed how, well, I haven't fully illuminated this, but if you've got pages on this side of your website or that side of your website, they really should be, they're pages, so they should probably work in a similar way. If you have a theme for the front end of your website, why shouldn't you have a theme for the admin side of your website as well? Here's my admin with WordPress. I would like to be able to change what displays here in the same way that I can use this editor to manipulate my templates. So it would be really nice if I could I don't want to do this just for the front end of my website. I would like to do this for the admin side as well. But from a principled thinking standpoint, because these two things are essentially the same, it's just a web page, then the way that they work, their construction, the way they come to be, all of that should be the same. There should be a skin or an editor such as this for the admin side, and there should be an editor such as this for the front end side. If we're taking these concepts and employing them in the most efficient manner, so things that are the same need to have the same kind of root functionality, that's how a theoretical replacement for WordPress in the future should work. You should have an editor for the admin side and an editor for the front end side. Now, there's some other little concerns here that get us into the weeds that I'll just briefly mention. Like, obviously, you don't want, if you're building sites for other people, you don't necessarily want them to have the power to go in and screw up the admin templates or to even screw with them at all. And so that's like a design problem that's easily solved. I can make it so that if you have an admin editor such as this, it's not easily accessible. It's not like, you don't just click on a link here in the admin, oh, change my admin. Like, I can see where that would be faulty. So maybe the controls like this for the admin side are a little more hidden, and like you have to like know a developer way to get into them. That's fine. Like, I don't have to provide easy links for end users to be able to have this much power and control over their own websites, okay? So bottom line is, it's not like if you're thinking like, oh God, I don't want my customers to be able to do this, that's easily solved, okay? So let's not worry about that for now. Let's just leave that aside. What I want to focus on is that the way the admin side of a website works is really the same as the way the front end side works. There's just a couple of key differences within the admin. And like I said, this whole visibility thing, like, do we really want everyone to be able to do this? Probably not. But the bottom line is these things are the same fundamentally and should work in fundamentally similar ways. Now, what's interesting about this, so I'm building a thing to replace WordPress that works this way, okay? And that's how I kind of got into this problem that I'm about to share. So if there is an editor for the admin side and an editor for the front end side, well, if you have, let's say you've got an editor for the front end side, but you haven't created anything in the templates yet. The templates are all empty. Well, if you went to the front end of your website and started to try to like go to a particular URL, the page would just be blank because there's no template data to run. And the same would be true of the admin side. If you hadn't already created a theme for the admin, then there would be the admin pages would be blank. And so if we accept this idea that both of the admin side and the front end side should work the same way, and that they should be run off data-driven templates, which I've kind of illuminated that concept for you already, then how do we get started? The very first time we run this thing, how's it going to work? If I need to be able to access an editor like this to create the templates, but there's no data yet to do that, like the admin side, I won't be able to go to a page where this editor just works because I will have had to create a template first that includes the thing that makes the editor pop up. Well, how's that going to work? It's like, once the system is running, it's easy to run this way, but to get it running the first time, there's this interesting little quirk. How can I need this data to already exist to be able to manipulate it, but if the data doesn't exist yet, how am I going to do that? And so I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks now and trying to think of like a good analog for explaining this. Like what is another concept that you're even more familiar with that I could, share with you that would make it easier for you to understand what I'm telling you here? Well, I thought of something recently that is very good. It's a perfect analog for this, actually. And it's about the most relatable thing in the universe for a human. Ready? Here it is. Let's think about Adam and Eve, the biblical Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So people, Adam and Eve are people, and people have all the things we need to do, we all have the code that we need to exist as humans and to do the things that we do. And in particular, the code that is the most important in this context is the ability for humans to reproduce. So a man and a woman can get together, boom, make a baby, and the human race can propagate because of that. But here's the interesting thing is that how do you get those first humans, right? You've got all the code you need. Humans have all the code they need to run and be humans. But how did they acquire that the first time? Like, how do you start the system from nothing and like, boom, now you have it, now it's going to run? How do you do it? And it's amazing, to me at least, that this dovetails with like the creation story and the creation myth. Like, wow, how can I run a theme on the admin side and the front end side of my website if no data already exists? And the answer, of course, and the Bible sort of, it doesn't tell us this, but if we just examine the story of Adam and Eve, the story is that God created Adam, and then God created Eve by taking a rib out of Adam and fashioning that into a woman. Okay? You don't have to take that literally, but what's the important takeaway is that it was necessary for some action to happen to create these first people, and then the system could run. The parts of the system, the components, Adam and Eve, have everything they need to be able to work together to then create the human race and propagate it. You can think of them both as templates. But something had to happen initially for those templates to be created. And they couldn't be created using the existing system because there were no humans to use to put together to reproduce to create the first humans. It's the exact same scenario. It's the exact same situation. Once the templates exist in the admin, I could go in and pull up this editor and then modify the templates that show in the admin, and it would all be different. Same thing for the front end. But you need what I'm going to call seed data. Seed data. In the case of humans and Adam and Eve, the seed data was Adam and Eve themselves. They were the seed data. Once the system was seeded with this initial data, then it can run. But the question and the problem really is, well, how do you get that seed data? Now, in my case, as far as like creating this, what I can do is I can create the data, like some placeholder data, if you will, that will make the admin run a little bit in a very scaled down fashion. But if I supply this system with seed data, then I'll be able to get it to run. And indeed, this is the step I'm going to have to take. I'm going to have to supply some seed data to this system to get it up and running the first time. Now, when I distribute the software in the future, it's already going to have some real sophisticated data that will have been created to like make a perfect admin and a perfect front end. But like I said, to do it the first time, I'm going to need some data already to be there, or else when I try to go to admin pages, they're just going to be blank. Now with WordPress, because WordPress doesn't work the right way, WordPress doesn't work in this manner that I've been describing throughout this video. But WordPress, for example, the admin pages are all what I would call hard-coded. They're written into the files of WordPress. Like the HTML markup that determines how admin pages work is all written into the code of WordPress. But that's a failure, right? If they're templates, they shouldn't be written into the files. If they're templates, they should exist as data. So I'm trying to be ideologically consistent. I want every facet of my system to work in this principally consistent way. And that is going to require me to add seed data to the system. And like I said, it's just a fascinating parallel that if you want to run the human experiment, you also need seed data to get it started for the first time. And if you really want to go down the rabbit hole here, you can kind of try to extrapolate this thinking out beyond just humans, and you realize that natural system, the systems in the universe, everything, would have needed seed data at one point in time to get started. Every truly modular system can only begin life with some seed data. It can't just spontaneously appear. And that is a mind-bending realization. It's fascinating, but this is how I know this new system I'm building is working the right way, is because it parallels all the other natural systems in our universe. And that's what computer science attempts to do. It is the language of system design, and it's the language of efficiency. It's like, how do you create things at a large scale and enable them to run and manage this stuff over time? Well, to do that, you have to identify everything about certain aspects of a system that are similar. You have to identify all the similarities. That becomes something known as the model, to go back to the model view controller parlance that I don't particularly care for. So you have your model, and then a specific instance of a human, for example, like Adam. Adam has his characteristics. Maybe he has blue eyes and brown hair, something like this. And Eve has her characteristics. Perhaps she has blonde hair. Who knows? Whatever. And she's this tall. That kind of thing. So that's the way modular systems based on inheritance work. And we call a particular so Eve herself and Adam himself, each one of them is an instance of the human model. But the human model, like 99% of the things that Adam and Eve have are shared. They're like the same. They have like 99% the same. And then the only thing that makes Adam Adam and Eve Eve are just those little differences. But most of the functions that Adam and Eve have are similar. People, most people pretty much all work the same way with just a few key differences that make us different. And so if you're going to design a system for maximum use, maximum scale, maximum efficiency, you have to separate the similarities, distill them down into the model, so that the instances only have to describe precisely what is different about their unique case. And that's the way natural systems work. I've already shown that's how humans work. I think you can pretty much agree with that. And that is the same ethos that I am bringing to this new replacement for WordPress. And it's going to affect every facet of the system, the admin side, the front end side. And we're going to be using the same tools to interface with each side, essentially. And that is going to be how we build and manage and control every aspect of the website moving forward. And that's the basic nature of inheritance. You've got a model or a series of models that all describe the fundamental aspects of, so if you're going to have instances of a thing, the model describes all the fundamental aspects of this thing. And then each instance just highlights the differences. And using that type of construction, you can scale infinitely. You can go any direction you want. You can always have control over the behavior. You can make one particular instance behave differently from other ones. An instance can have unique functionality that other instances don't have. Instances all inherit the functionality that exists within the model, but all instances don't have to use all that functionality that exists in the model. So there's flexibility up the chain and down the chain. And these types of, this leverage, it doesn't exist in a file-driven environment like WordPress. Indeed, WordPress fails on both the admin and the front-end side currently because the basic WordPress template system, not what I've shown you here, the basic WordPress template system is file-driven. And then, of course, the admin side is not even file-driven in the same, it is file-driven, but not quite in the same way. It doesn't even have templates. It's just all baked into the WordPress files. So it is very inflexible. It's very inflexible. You can imagine an operating environment in the future using my new system that I'm developing where you could completely change the way the admin looks to suit the end user. So one of the big complaints of WordPress through the years has been that it continues to grow and they add more functionality to the admin and it keeps getting more and more complicated. Some of the settings and stuff that you can mess with are really obtuse. They're very technical. They're just not things you want like a basic website user to interface with, ever. You don't want to have to see it. You don't want to have to deal with it. You don't want them to have access to things that they can break or things that they could change that might break or affect the functionality of the site. So that is, a common complaint about the WordPress admin. And while some plugins do exist to skin the WordPress admin or to change it in some way, they've never really taken off. And that's because WordPress is so obtuse and complicated in what it requires to manipulate the admin and change it. And it's still limited. Like you can kind of skin it a little bit and change what appears, but it is a hassle to do. And that's why none of those plugins that skin the admin have ever really caught fire and changed the nature of WordPress installations for clients. It's because it's just too hard to deal with. It's a bad system design, and so then we're dealing with a bad system and trying to modify it. It's just a fool's game. But what I have explained here, the future environment that you'll be able to go into an editor, remove things that you don't want from the admin, and boom, it'll just be a real pared down thing. And people can only have access to like the very basic functions that they're ever going to need. Like, it could be as simple as create new content and maybe some other tools to, arrange that content, like put them into groups or categories or however you want to think about these things. But the bottom line is a data-driven experience like this that is modular in nature and uses this concept of inheritance, extending a base model, can be used to create any type of outcome you want. It can be as grandiose and full of functionality or as pared down and as Spartan as you like. So this is just another, this is an example or an illustration of the potential of a fully modular system, a system that uses objects and inheritance all the way through, not just in some places where it's cool or convenient or was easier to do, but when it exists everywhere, then you have control over everything that happens at every point in the process. And there's other downstream stuff too that like again, this is too much in the weeds for this video, but like if you want to create a component to work with this system, as if you were going to create a plugin to work with the current WordPress, if you want to create something to work with this new system, it's going to be way easier, way more straightforward. There's just so many complications that exist in a system like WordPress that anyone who's worked with it for any length of time just sort of internalizes the way things are. And when you actually get a chance to see outside that, it can be mind-blowing because you realize, things could actually be very much simpler, much more powerful. You can take simpler actions, tell the system simpler things, and have it do more fascinating things on the output side of things. It's sort of like a little bit like AI and using like ChatGPT or something like that. You can give it just a little bit of input, and it gives you this great response full of detail and things like that. The system I'm showing you here is similar. A little bit of input can go a long way in a modular system because everything is where it needs to be. All the timing and stuff works out. Like it eliminates so many concerns that we have as developers. And this is just a happy consequence of really good system design. So I hope that what I've shown you today can at least get you a little bit excited about the possibilities for the future. I hope maybe trying to illustrate some of these concepts of inheritance and of data-driven stuff instead of file-driven stuff, and how that plays into your real-world experience of working with websites and all that stuff. Hopefully you can kind of see some of the possibilities that exist, and I'm going to be bringing them to you this year. So please stay tuned to this channel and my socials, stuff like that. I'm at DIY Themes on X right now. So if you want to keep up with my stuff there, I'm talking about this stuff over there. Just subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be putting all the major stuff on this channel. But this is the development course I'm currently on. If this is your bag, stay tuned because I think the stuff I bring you over the course of this year, you're going to love. Especially if you dig this at all, you're really going to like what's coming. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.